It was the end of the night. The energy in the room was electric. It was a physical thing, something you could feel on your skin. Thousands of people packed together, all focused on one man. He had given them everything. He had rocked and rolled, he had snarled, he had danced with a kind of dangerous energy that seemed impossible for a man his age. He had sung gospel songs that shook the rafters and made you feel something close to religion. He had sung ballads that broke your heart. He had worn a white jumpsuit covered in jewels, looking less like a man and more like a myth. A superhero, the king. And now it was over. Almost. The band would wind down for the last big, loud number. The sweat was pouring down his face. He was breathing hard. He'd take a sip of water. He'd hand out a few more scarves to the screaming women in the front row. A sense of finality would start to settle over the arena. The audience knew what was coming. They had been through this ritual before. They felt the shift. The wild party was ending. It was time to go home. But not before one last moment. The stage lights would dim. The wild, pulsing colors would fade into a soft, gentle blue or a warm, single spotlight. The drummers would put down the heavy sticks. The guitarists would quiet their instruments. A hush would fall. And then, the keyboard player would begin. Just a few simple, cascading notes. An arpeggio. It was a sound that was both gentle and sad. It was the sound of a music box winding down. It was the sound of a lullaby. And then he would start to sing. His voice, which moments before had been a powerful roar, became a whisper. It was soft, it was tender, it was incredibly vulnerable. The song wasn't a rocker. It wasn't a blues number. It was something else entirely. It was a hymn, a prayer, a direct, personal message from him to every single person in that massive room. The song began with a piece of advice. Wise men say it started. Only fools rush in. It was a caution, a moment of reflection. It acknowledged the risk of what was about to be said. But the singer couldn't follow that advice. The song's logic was simple. Some things are just meant to be. A river flows surely to the sea. It's a law of nature. It's inevitable. And so is this feeling, well, darling. So it goes. This song wasn't written for the stage. It wasn't designed to close a massive rock concert. It came from a movie, one of his light, fun, escapist movies set in a tropical paradise. In the film, he sings it to a grandmother on her birthday, presenting her with a music box that plays the melody. It was a sweet, charming scene, a nice little moment in a pleasant film. It was not by any stretch of the imagination a showstopper. It was just a pretty song. But something happened to that song when he took it out of the movie and put it on the stage. It transformed. It became something much bigger, much more profound. It became his final statement. His goodbye for the night. And over time, it became his anthem. The official closing ceremony for every single concert. So why did this gentle, simple ballad become the permanent farewell from the king of rock and roll? Part of the answer lies in its origins, which go back much further than a Hollywood movie. The melody itself is old, very old. It was written in 1784. The composer was a man named Jean-Paul Egide Martini, a German-born musician living in France. The song was called Plaisir d'amour, which means the pleasure of love. It was a classical piece, a romance written for the refined tastes of the French court. And its message was very different from the one Elvis would eventually sing. The original French lyrics are about heartbreak. They are deeply cynical. The pleasure of love lasts only a moment, the song says. The grief of love lasts a lifetime. It's a song about being abandoned by a lover. It's beautiful, but it's a song of deep sorrow and regret. It speaks of a love that is fleeting and a pain that is permanent. For over a century and a half, that was the song's identity. A sad classical piece about the cruelty of love. Then, in the 1960s, a team of songwriters took that old French melody and wrote new English words for the movie. They kept the gentle, flowing tune, the part that felt like a river heading to the sea. But they completely inverted the meaning. They threw out the cynicism, they threw out the heartbreak. They replaced it with the exact opposite sentiment. They wrote about a love that was fated, inevitable, and eternal. A love that you couldn't fight, even if you wanted to. A love that was as natural and unstoppable as gravity. They took a song about the end of love and turned it into a song about the beginning of a love that would never end. This transformation is crucial. The song he chose to sing every night wasn't just a love song. It was a statement of faith, it was a rejection of cynicism, it was a promise. When he sang it on stage, he wasn't singing it to one person. He was singing it to everyone. It was his way of telling the audience that his connection with them was real. It wasn't just a performance. It wasn't just a transaction. It was something deeper. Take my hand, he sang. Take my whole life, too. This was a profound offer. In the context of a concert, he was breaking the fourth wall. He was stepping out of the role of the entertainer and speaking as a man. He was offering a piece of himself to the crowd. The structure of the song is also key to its power as a closer. It's built on a rising tide of emotion. It starts as a whisper. It's quiet, intimate, almost hesitant. But as it progresses, it builds. The drums come in, but not with a rock beat. They come in with a slow, powerful, almost military tattoo. It's a sound of ceremony, a march. The orchestra swells, the backup singers join in, their voices like a choir of angels. The song grows and grows until it reaches a massive emotional peak. He holds the final notes, his voice soaring over the entire orchestra. And then, just as quickly as it built, it recedes. It ends quietly. The final line is delivered with the same tenderness as the first. The music fades out, leaving a lingering sense of peace. This structure was the perfect emotional arc to end a concert. A typical rock show ends with a bang. The biggest, loudest, fastest song is saved for last. The band plays it with all the remaining energy, the lights flash, and they exit the stage, leaving the audience breathless and electrified. He did the opposite. He took all that wild, frenetic energy he had built up over 2 hours, and he gently brought it back down to earth. He didn't abandon the audience in a state of high excitement. He guided them to a soft landing. It was a release. A collective exhale. The song was a form of communion. It was a shared moment of quiet intimacy after a very loud party. It told the audience, the wild ride is over. Now let's share something true and simple before you go. This became especially important during his Las Vegas years in the 1970s. The Vegas shows were a spectacle. They were grand, theatrical, and sometimes over the top. He was a living legend, performing night after night in the biggest showrooms in the world. The pressure was immense. The persona of the king could be isolating. He was separated from his audience by his fame, by security guards, by the sheer scale of the production. That final song was his way of cutting through all of it. For 3 or 4 minutes, he wasn't the bejeweled superstar. He was just a man singing a simple, honest song about love. The lyrics are incredibly direct. There is no complex poetry. There are no clever metaphors. It is plain language. Shall I stay? Would it be a sin? It's a question asked with genuine humility. It's a plea. In that moment, the most famous man in the world made himself vulnerable. This vulnerability was the source of its power. The audience saw past the jumpsuit and the entourage. They saw the man. And the song's message was universal. Everyone understands the feeling of falling in love when it feels like you have no choice in the matter. Everyone understands the pull of a force stronger than yourself. The song gave a name and a melody to one of the most fundamental human experiences. By singing it, he was connecting with every single person in the room on that fundamental level. The performance itself became a ritual. As the song began, he would often go down on one knee. It was a gesture of supplication, of surrender. He wasn't the conquering king anymore. He was a servant to the song, to the emotion. As the song reached its climax, he would rise. The band would thunder behind him. He would often spread his arms wide, his cape fanning out behind him like the wings of some great bird. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated theater. It was his final, iconic pose of the night. The image of him, arms outstretched, bathed in a single spotlight, as this powerful ballad soared, is burned into the collective memory of anyone who ever saw him live. After the song ended, there was nothing left to say. The music would fade, he would bow. He would say, "Thank you and good night," and he would be gone. Then, immediately, an announcer's voice would boom over the sound system. "Ladies and gentlemen, Elvis has left the building." That announcement was a necessary part of the ritual. It was a formal declaration that the magic was over. It was needed because the closing song didn't feel like an ending. It felt like a promise. It left the audience in a state of emotional grace, and without that announcement, they might have stayed all night, hoping for more. The song grounded him. In the later years, his life was chaotic. He was dealing with health problems, personal struggles, and the immense pressure of his own legend. The concerts could be erratic, but that final song was always the anchor. It was the one constant, the one moment of pure, reliable truth in the entire show. No matter what happened before it, the show always ended with this moment of grace and sincerity. It was his way of resetting, of clearing the air, of making sure the final thing his audience felt was a sense of love and connection. It's a strange choice on the surface. The man who invented rock and roll, who scandalized a generation with his moving hips, chose to end his shows not with a rebel yell, but with a tender whisper. He didn't end with Jailhouse Rock or Hound Dog. He ended with a song that could be played at a wedding. But it was precisely this contrast that made it so powerful. It showed his range, not just as a vocalist, but as a person. It was a reminder that the heart of his music was never just about rebellion. It was about emotion, raw, unfiltered emotion. He could express anger and desire, but he could also express tenderness and devotion. The closing song was the ultimate expression of that devotion, a devotion to his audience. Think about the lyrics one more time. Take my hand, take my whole life too. It's an extraordinary thing to say to a room full of strangers, but he meant it. For that brief time on stage, his whole life was theirs. He gave them everything he had. And this song was the final, most precious gift. He wasn't just singing about falling in love with a person. He was singing about his relationship with the audience. He couldn't help falling in love with them, night after night. The river of his life flowed to them, the sea. It was his destiny. So, when the lights came up, the audience didn't feel drained. They didn't feel like they had just been through a rock and roll assault. They felt full. They felt a sense of warmth, of closure. He hadn't just entertained them, he had spoken to them. He had thanked them, he had told them he loved them using the only words that felt big enough for the job. It wasn't a marketing decision. It wasn't a calculated choice to sell more records. It evolved organically because it was the right feeling. It was the truest way he could say goodbye. It was a song that started in the court of 18th century France, a sad tune about lost love. It traveled through time, crossed an ocean, and found a new life in a Hollywood movie. But its final home, its true purpose, was on a darkened stage in a single spotlight. It became the last word from a king to his people, a simple, beautiful, and eternal statement. A promise that even though he was leaving the building, the love would remain. The song, of course, was Can't Help Falling in Love.